Fame and glory. Many people strive for them even more than for money. Generally, recognition is one of the basic biological needs of a person. Man as a social being strives for other people to recognize his merits and achievements. Someone becomes famous for starting a war, someone makes great discoveries, and someone becomes an actor or musician. But fame comes to some people as a result of very strange actions. It is about such people that I want to tell you today, and so these are 10 people with very strange fame. And so on the first line we got a pretty 29-year-old American woman, Margaret Adams, known on YouTube under the nickname Mage Bun. Margaret became famous for looking. She looked into the camera, recorded the whole thing and posted the whole thing on her channel. She also sometimes said something or waved her hands, but very rarely. Several of her videos went viral in the United States, after which they were shown on American TV. The Japanese also watch American TV. They saw these videos and showed them in Japan, after which Margaret became incredibly popular in Japan, where, as you know, they love little girls with big eyes and very strange reality shows. At the moment, there are more than 130,000 subscribers on her channel, and the number of views on her channel exceeds 110 million. I'll leave a link to her channel under this video. Maybe a little Japanese lives inside you, and who knows, maybe you'll also become a fan of her. At number 2 we got an American Alvin Kelly, who became famous for being on high posts in the 1920s and sitting there for a long time. It all started with the fact that Alvin began to earn money by sitting on a high pillar near the cinema and inviting people there. People passing by threw money into a bowl that stood near his pillar, and then Alvin realized that climbing the pillar could be a good way to go up in life. After that, Alvin began climbing another poles in the city and quickly became a local celebrity. People from all over the city came to his post to look at him and also to throw him another coin. In order not to lose interest in his activities, Alvin each time tried to break his own record for the time spent on the pillars. Each time he tried to sit there as long as possible. In general, everything was fun and everyone really liked it. Towards the end of his career, Alvin was making $100 an hour in the 1920s. If you transfer this money to modern dollars, then it turns out that Alvin earned more than $1,000 an hour for just sitting on a pole. This is how the boy came to success, climbed the pole and climbed through life. Towards the end of his career, he set a record. Alvin sat on a 69-meter pole for 49 days. Alvin learned to sleep on a pole. He tied one leg to a pole for support. People who came to look at him lifted his cigarettes on a rope. In general, everything was enough for him. His career ended with the arrival of the Great Depression in the United States, when millions of people lost their jobs and were no longer able to pay him. Number 3. American Plenty Wingo. One day in 1931, Plenty was sitting with his friends in a bar and discussing the topic of how to become famous. And then he came up with the genius idea. Plenty decided to go backwards around the world. He moved in special sunglasses with mirrors on the sides so that he could see what was happening behind him. Plenty departed California and reached the eastern seaboard of the United States, where he took ferries to Europe. Having landed in Spain, he went backwards to Turkey, but the customs officers apparently didn't understand something and deported him back to the USA. The plan to travel around the world failed, but even that was enough for him to be invited for an interview on many of the central channels of American TV of that time. Plenty even wrote a book about himself called Around the World Back to Front. So it goes. Number 4. After Singh, from the city of Tanjore in India. He became famous for the fact that for 16 years he wears a turban on his head that weighs 85 kilograms. Singh spent more than 16 years putting it together, and it takes at least 6 hours every day to put it on. So now, do not think that you have a girlfriend who dresses very slowly and gets ready before going out. The 85 kilogram turban consists of 645 meters of fabric Ordinary followers of his religion wear ordinary turbans, the length of which is 7 meters. He is 65 years old, he moves on a motorcycle and constantly attracts the attention of others, and he also has big problems with narrow doorways in his hometown. He is considered, among other things, a very authoritative and respected preacher, because a big turban is good. Number 5. Ryan Bates from Moscow, Idaho. This guy has set a goal for himself. He wants to collect every VHS copy of the movie Speed that are in general on this planet. This movie was released in 1994 and starred by Keanu Reeves. The movie tells about a mind bus that moves at high speed, but if its speed drops below 50 miles per hour, it will explode, and the main character, Keanu Reeves, is trying to figure it out somehow. Ryan's collection currently numbers over 500 copies. He even has a couple of dozen DVDs with the movie that he uses to exchange for VHS copies. He buys VHS copies at pawn shops where people give them away for next to nothing. In the future, Ryan plans to buy a bus and make an exact copy of what was in the movie. And what do you collect? Tell me about it in the comments. I'm very interested. Number 6. David Icke is a former professional footballer and sports commentator who in the early 90s decided to find out who really rules the world. Icke came to the conclusion that the world is ruled by some secret group, namely the alien race of reptilians. David Icke argues that many famous people such as the Rockefellers, George Bush, Elizabeth II are actually the descendants of the reptilians, only in human form. He also reports that since childhood they all practice Satanism and human sacrifice. David wears only purple clothes all the time. He has written over 15 books about his theory, and his website is visited by over 500,000 people around the world every week. David also lectured at some universities in the USA, and he was so good at convincing the audience of his theory that they then applauded him standing up. He is good at persuading. In general, the theory of the reptilian conspiracy is a very popular topic. A huge number of books have been written on this topic and many films have been shot. So if you are interested, you can Google it, but there are actually no reptilians, I guarantee it, I guess. Number 7. Japanese soldier Shoichi Yokoi, who became famous for living in the jungle on the island for 28 years after World War II because he didn't know that the war was over. During the war, Yokoi was sent by a battalion to the island of Guam, which is located in the Pacific Ocean. At that time, the island was under the control of the Japanese army. In the summer of 1944, the American army landed on the island and began to slowly attack the Japanese. Soon the American army captured the entire island, but Yokoi didn't want to be captured, so he went into the jungle. The war ended, but our brave soldier didn't know about it, and even when American planes dropped leaflets on the island with the news that the war was over and Japan surrendered, Yokoi didn't believe this. He believed that all this was enemy propaganda. Together with him in the jungle lived 2 more soldiers, but they soon died of hunger. In total, Yokoi lived in the jungle for 28 years. Yokoi lived in a dugout. He gave food by hunting and gathering, after which he was found by 2 local residents and then returned to his homeland in Japan. Arriving home, he uttered words that soon became very popular in Japan. He said, "I'm ashamed that I came back alive." In Japan, he married and settled in a small village and even received the honor of being received by the emperor. Shoichi has become for Japan one of the symbols of how to serve the motherland. He wrote a book and even a documentary was made about him. Number 8. Maro Nasseri is known for living at the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris for 18 years. Maro was born in Iran. He grew up and began to take part in protests against the government. The government didn't like this, and in 1977 it expelled him from the country. Maro tried for a very long time to obtain the status of a political refugee until finally, in 1981, the UN International Commission gave such status. Now Miran had the right to obtain citizenship from any European country. Without thinking twice, he chose Great Britain. Miran arrived in Paris to fly from there to London, but in Paris someone stole his bag with money and documents. However, he was still able to somehow get on a plane to London. But the British don't allow people without documents to enter England, so he couldn't leave the airport in London. As a result, he was sent back to Paris, but in Paris without documents they couldn't let him out of the airport. So he lived in the transit zone for 18 years. He ate what the passengers gave him, to whom he told his heartbreaking story. Soon he became famous and journalists began to come to him, to whom he gave interviews about his life for money. It is not surprising because all his free time Miran devoted to the study of economics. In 1998, his lawyer finally got the documents issued to him, but Miran was fine at the airport, so he refused to leave. It all ended with the fact that in 2006 he fell ill with something incomprehensible and he was taken to the hospital. 6 months later, he was discharged from the hospital and settled in Paris, where he still lives. Based on his life, Steven Spielberg directed the film Terminal, starring Tom Hanks. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it today. This movie is great, I guarantee you. Number 9. Lal Bihari is a Hindu who became famous for being considered dead from 1976 to 1994, although in fact he was alive, and all because his greedy uncle really wanted to take possession of his property and therefore bribed a local official to declare Bihari dead. The cunning official didn't refuse the bribe and therefore quickly recorded Bihari as dead. In the end, the uncle poured all the property of his nephew, but Bihari himself found out about his death only when he went for a loan to a bank where he was refused. They say we don't issue loans to the dead. After this incident, Bihari tried for a very long time to prove to the officials that he was alive and even organized a whole association of the dead, which included thousands of people who fell into the same situation. Only after 18 years, he managed to prove to officials that he was alive. Number 10 on our list is Lena Medina from Peru, who became famous for becoming the youngest mother in human history. Lena gave birth to a child when she was only 5 years old. Her parents brought her to the doctor because they finally realized that she had a very big belly. Doctors diagnosed a tumor from the beginning, but then one of them came up with the idea that she might be pregnant. Here's such a genius idea. In the end, it turned out that the girl was 7 months pregnant. After 2 months, a healthy boy was born to her who was brought up with her, and he considered her a sister. The boy only at the age of 10 found out that his sister was in fact his mother. Lena never told anyone about who became the happy father of the boy. From the beginning, they were suspicious that he was her own father, but the suspicions weren't confirmed. Lena died at the age of 82. That's all, thank you for watching. I'll be very glad for your likes and comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more interesting things.